Lu Ru Fan. What is it? Well, it's a Taiwanese dish that's super comforting, warm, and delicious. It's basically braised pork belly with the skin on, with lots of soya sauce, aromats, and it's served over rice with boiled eggs and some bok choy. It's a huge crowd pleaser and the perfect dish to cook when you're at home having one of those slow days. So let's get stuck in. The pork belly. What you're looking for, like with most pork belly dishes, is something with a nice, amount of fat, but still has a good amount of flesh to fat ratio. We're gonna leave the skin on and we're simply gonna dice it. So I think traditionally this is diced pretty small. I like to keep it a little bit bigger. I just think you get a bit of a better texture in the final dish. So you're looking for roughly cubes of pork, sort of that big. We need to render this pork down a bit. So you want a relatively large pot. A clay pot works really well. I don't have a clay pot big enough. You need the lid for this. Oh, you don't need it, but it's handy. Get a little bit of oil in the bottom. I'm just using some peanut oil here. That's to stop it catching too much before it starts to render. And we're gonna get our pork in. So it's gonna take about 15 to 20 minutes just to get not all of it, a lot of that fat rendered from that pork. All right, so this is all the aromats that we're gonna use for this dish. And I'll run through most of those in a second, but I just wanna get slicing these shallots first. We need fried shallots for this dish. Now you can buy fried shallots, but for this one, I think it's worth taking the time to do your own. We're gonna fry them in the fat that comes off this pork, just adding another layer of flavor. Don't forget to make sure you keep moving this pork around the pot or you get too much color in one spot. And a little bit of color is not a problem at all. So to fry the shallots, mandolin's really handy. If not, you can just do it with a knife. Start by peeling your shallots and then slice them on the mandolin or with a knife. About that thick. And as always, make sure you're using the garb when you're using a mandolin. I'm very naughty and I never use it. In fact, I don't even know where it is, to be honest. So that's like not even 5 minutes and you can see already how much fat's coming off that pork. Now with the shallots, I like to break them up a bit. I find they fry better. If you push them around the pot enough, they will break up, but I don't know, maybe I'm being OCD. So another thing we can do to get ahead is cook our eggs. We're gonna put some hard-boiled eggs into this and they braise in the soy sauce and they go a really nice color and they get really well seasoned. A lot of people don't like the texture of these eggs once they're cooked because they go, I guess, a little bit more rubbery. They're kind of a hard-cooked egg. So if you're not a fan of that texture, then simply soft boil or kind of medium boil some eggs to put on at the end. But I think the flavor that they get from braising in the liquor more than makes up for the fact that they go a little bit rubbery. So we're just gonna boil these eggs for 8 minutes, peel them, and then halfway through the cooking, we're gonna add them to the pot with all the soy sauce and aromats. All right, so back to our pork. You can see here that the fat has cleared up a lot. It's become a lot more, I guess, opaque. Is that the right word? Anyway, it's cleared up a lot more. It's not as cloudy as before, and that's what we're looking for. So I've turned the heat off, or I'm gonna turn the heat off, and we'll just let that kind of do its thing for a second, and we'll get the aromats ready before we pull some of that fat out to fry the shallots. So we're gonna need some ginger. You don't need to peel it. You want some nice big slices so that they're easy to pull out later.
While you're cutting, Chef, opaque is the opposite of what you meant.
Opaque is the opposite. Good, thanks for the fact check. Just a humble cook. All right, ginger, sliced, and garlic. You want about 8 cloves of garlic. Nothing crazy, just peeled and crushed. Time to get some of that pork lard out of there. Basically, we're gonna put a ladle in there and scoop it out. Just like that. Into another pot. Put this to the side. So to our pork, we're gonna add our ginger, garlic, cinnamon stick, star anise, bay leaves. Get the heat back on. Shaoxing or Chinese cooking wine. Rock sugar, light soy sauce, dark soy sauce, some white pepper, and some Chinese 5-spice. And the Chinese 5-spice, pretty important in this dish. Just gonna give that a little mix. Make sure all those flavors are nicely married together. Who invented that saying? This is a terrible saying. And I like to scrape the bottom a little bit from all those really nice brown pieces from the pork. It's worth mentioning this dish is really good to, to make a large batch of too. Just, you obviously use a bigger pot, increase the amount of aromats. If you're gonna cook it, you might as well cook a bit of it and then you can use it for meal prep. All right, just gonna pull these out and into some cold water. Oh, this is smelling good, I'll tell you that much. All right, once this is all well combined and all those little delicious bits from the bottom are scraped off, we're gonna top this with some water, just enough to cover. For one last little stir. So we're gonna bring that back to a light to a simmer, a light simmer. We're on full temperature right now. Then we'll turn it right down, put the lid on it, and we're gonna cook that for about an hour and a half total. But while that's cooking, we'll start frying the shallots. Now, if you don't have quite enough fat from the pork, feel free to add some. And make sure you keep this oil once you've used it to fry your shallots in, because it's full of shallot flavor. So you can use it next time you're making a stir fry, anything like that. Just keep it in a jar in the fridge. Don't keep it air temperature. And you kind of want to do this frying the shallot slowly. So don't have the oil like, raging hot. You can have it on high, but at a certain point, kind of, you don't want it smoking hot is what I'm trying to say. You're probably looking for 140, 150, or the chopstick test. Let's do the chopstick test. Put a chopstick in. It starts to bubble just like that. You're good to go. All right, now the trick with frying shallots is take them out before you think they're ready, because they often continue to cook or continue to get darker in color after you've pulled them out. Like most things in cooking, carryover cooking we call it. Get the rest of our shallots in. It's always easier to fry in batches if you don't have heaps of oil. And there you go, nice golden shallots. Now they looked a bit anemic when I pulled them out, but the carryover cooking has meant that they turn nice and golden brown. And if you overcook shallots, they become really bitter. So you want them nice and golden, not too dark. So our pork's simmering very nicely, our shallots are fried. It's just time to peel these eggs before we pop them in the pot. That's been going about 20 minutes, 25 minutes now. So you want the shallots and the eggs in there for about an hour. All right, let's have a look at this pork. Give her a little mix, delicious. Time to add our shallots. Stir those through. Seems kind of counterproductive to fry shallots and then put them in a braise like this. But it's because of the cooking process brings out the real sweetness in the shallots, and that's what you're looking for. Very similar to how in French cooking, the recipe usually starts with an onion being sauteed in oil and salt first. All right, now we're gonna add our eggs. We probably don't want to mix this around too much because we don't want to risk breaking our eggs up now. Give them a bit of a helping hand to sink in. Lid back on. So that's going to cook for about another hour, but we'll check it every 20 minutes or so just to make sure it's not catching. But we do want it on a pretty low heat. So this has been cooking for almost an hour in total now, about half an hour since we put those eggs in. Let's have a look. Ooh. Oh yeah, it's not sticking, that's good. Looking nice and tender. I reckon that's got about another half an hour to go, and we'll leave the lid off for the last half an hour. I want that sauce to thicken up slightly, and that pork just to get a bit more tender. Well, this last half an hour, it's time to cook some rice. I'm gonna run you through how I cook rice, because I feel like there's still people that get this wrong, but let's make some. First tip is to buy yourself a rice cooker. Now you can do it in a pot, it's really not that hard, but a rice cooker is just so much easier. You don't even need a fancy one, just the cheap rice cooker from your supermarket. First step, put your rice in your bowl. So I'm using jasmine rice today. I think it works really well with this. Now the next step, and arguably the most important, is to make sure you wash your rice. Pretty simple. Cold water, agitate it well, rub it together. It's gonna get all milky or opaque. Pour it out. And again. Now, often people say you need to wash your rice until the water runs clear. I'm not sure that's entirely true. I think if you tried to wash it until it runs clear, you'd end up with no rice, but you definitely want it more clear than it is right now. It's also worth noting that there is certain rice dishes where you don't wash your rice. Risotto, one of them. Rice pudding is another one. Pilau rice is another one. But if you're using a rice cooker like this, always wash it. One last one for good luck. And for me, that's about as clear as it's gonna get. Drain that last lot off. And then top it up with water. And what you're looking for is if you put your finger in and it touches the rice, the water on top just hits your first knuckle. Make sure that's kind of the same all over and you're good to go. Into the rice cooker. Easy as that.
What's that behind the rice cooker?
Oh, what's that, you ask? That's my cookbook. If you didn't know, I wrote a cookbook and the link for it is down below. Go get yourself a copy now. That was genius. I completely forgot about that. So the last thing we need to do is just to steam some bok choy. Some nice baby bok choy. I just like to steam it in a bamboo basket. Just cut it in half first. Lay it in. Onto some boiling water. Now we're just gonna take all our aromats out. So there's our cinnamon stick and our ginger. Our bay leaf should be hiding in there somewhere. The garlic I definitely leave in there. There's nothing wrong with eating that garlic. The ginger's probably still a bit hectic. I can't find those bay leaves, so I guess they're staying in. Oh, there's one. Oh, there's another one. Look at that, patience. Nah, last one's staying in there. Time to plate up. Start with some rice. Whoa, beautiful fluffy rice. Give it a fluff. Let a bit of steam come off it. Give us a little mix before we put some on there. Oh, there's that last bay leaf, you little sucker. Good amount of sauce on there, that's the good stuff. One of the eggs, and some bok choy. There we go. The worst part of my job, the taste test. Get some of that rice covered in that sauce. Oh, you'd think I'd learn by now to be a bit more patient so I don't pull stupid faces on cameras, but I just can't. It's delicious. The pork's beautifully cooked, super tender, but not dry at all. The fat's nicely rendered, and the flavors are incredible. Sweet, sour, salty, not spicy at all, obviously, there's no chili in here. And really rich in umami, and that rice is just soak it all up. And now you know what lu ru fan is. Delicious. It's very easy to see why that is comfort food in a food-obsessed country like Taiwan, because that's like a warm hug in the bowl. Absolutely delicious. Thank you so much for watching. Like this video if you took anything from it, subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. Peace.